Good evening, everyone. Let's quickly do a recap of what we've done for the last three weeks, and we were able to tell ourselves few things about project management, and from there we spoke about what are the different areas you can get into, meaning the two major known certifications or methodology, including framework. And also, we told ourselves the difference between or differences between a PMI framework as well as Prince2 methodology. And then from there, we shared what are the key sector or roles you can start applying for. Then from there, last week, we were able to talk we're able to talk about the 7 principles of Prince2. And if you can remember the 7 principles of Prince2, you can just keep typing. I'll open it up for just 1 minute. Just quickly type. We have 7 principles. Who can remember those 7 principles? Managed by stages. Thank you, Florence. Yes. Managed by stages. Continue business justification. Thank you, Ade. What else? Focus on the product. Thank you, Florence, again. What else did we say? I know a lot of people are using Google at the moment. Learn from experience. Thank you. Tailor to project environment. Ola. Manage by exception. Yes, there will always be tolerances. There will always be threshold. So we need to manage by exception. Continue business justification. Thank you. We got that from our day earlier on. What else? So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more. Define roles and responsibilities. Thank you very much, Florence. So we said that the first one is continue business justification, meaning as a project progresses, you have to always justify why we need to do this project. And also we said that the second one is you need to learn from experience, meaning there are a lot of people that might have done something similar to what you're doing before, or a project of such happened in the organization prior to your time. You need to learn from experience. And also while you're doing your own project, you need to document all the experiences that are coming to you. And also we say you need to manage by stages. Prince2 advises that you manage your project by stages so that you can know, should I progress, should I not progress to the next stage or to the next level. And we also say you need to manage by exception. Managing by exception in the sense that there will always be tolerances, there will always be a threshold. Prince2 is not that rigid. Prince2 gives exception for some of the roles or some of the tasks that a project manager can undertake. And also we say you need to focus on the product. Prince2 focuses majorly on the product. And that is why we always have product description. We'll always have acceptance criteria and all that on the project. So also the last one is second to the last is we need to define roles and responsibilities. So defining roles and responsibilities, Prince2 advises that we need to know who is doing what. Right from the scratch, we need to understand who is doing what, such that we don't have conflict of roles or responsibilities within the project. And the last one says you need to tailor to the project environment. Like I said earlier on, Prince2 is not that rigid. Because you're doing a tiny project or a mega project, you have to make sure you tailor it to the kind of environment you have or to the kind of project you are handling. So that is what Prince2 it's all about. The principles of Prince2. And also we move to the themes of project management. Who wants to tell me what are the 7 themes of project management? Quality. Yes, focus on the product. Quality. Change. Managed by exception. Plans. Organization. Risk. Thank you. What else? Progress. Thank you. Someone said business. Change. Thank you. Business case. Lawrence. Thank you. Okay, so these are majorly the themes of Prince 2: change, business case, risk, progress, plan, quality. And we need to make sure that organization, we need to make sure that we manage all of these guys as we progress through the project. And also from there, we moved to the 7 processes of Prince 2. What are the 7 processes of Prince 2 that we spoke about? Start up a project. Thank you. Controlling the stage. Thank you. Directing the project. Initiating. Thank you. Managing product delivery. Thank you. Okay, so I wasn't gonna do this before, but I'm tempted to do it now. So what I want us to be grouped at the end of the day. If you can stay on, but if it's a Telegram, if it's a Telegram chat, I want us to have 5 groups, and within that 5 groups, I want us to, we're gonna have one single project, and the project is we're developing, or we are migrating 1,000. The project we started with, we're migrating 1,000 laptops for LBB, London Borough of Bexley. We're migrating their laptops from Windows Microsoft 2010 to Office 365. That is the project. The project is 3 months. 3 months for the project, and the budget is £100,000. So if the budget is £100,000, so I want the 5 groups. So the 5 groups, I want the 5 groups to develop one, a project mandate. So are we typing that? Are we typing that? A project mandate. Each group to develop a project mandate. I want you to also develop a business case. So let's start. So it's 2 group, business case and project mandate. Nope, I just typed everything. If you can see what I typed. Can you see what I typed? Just type yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. So that's the project. So I want you to develop those. I want to manage those projects. So today, for the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about PMI. I mean, we've been talking about Prince 2. So for the sake of people that, no, I typed it on the chat. I only typed it on the chat. Check your chat. Scroll up and check the chat, not the screen. Okay, so today we'll be talking about PMI Framework. What exactly is the PMI Framework? What are we talking about? Remember, we said the 777 for Prince 2, the 7 principles, the 7 themes, and the 7 processes. So let's look at what PMI talks about. So PMI starts off with their project definition. So you know what? Project is a temporary endeavor undertaking to create a unique product. We've been talking about this. So by now, this definition should be ringing in our heads. So PMI says that, you know what? We've got three constraints when it comes to PMI methodology, when it comes to projects, the first constraint is scope. The next constraint is time, and the next constraint is cost. So if with our project to LBB, who can identify these three constraints? You can identify the three constraints. Just type it. What's the scope constraint? Just type it. What's the scope constraint in our LBB project? What's that scope constraint? Who wants to type? What's the scope constraint? What's the time constraint? Yeah, Florence saying time. Yeah, what's the time constraint? There's a constraint. There is a scope goals. What is the scope goals? The scope goals is number of laptops. Good. Excellent. Dami said migrating 1,000 laptops. That is specific. Yomi, try to be. Ola, try to be specific. Scope. Yomi, thank you. Yomi says 1,000. Dilawa says it's 3 months. That's the goal. Our goal is we need to achieve this within 3 months. What is the cost? Ola said 1,100 pounds. Nope, that wasn't what I said. The budget, 200 budget. Nope, that wasn't what I. Thank you, Yomi. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Ola. 100,000 pounds budget win. Thank you. So you can see now that a project will always have these three major constraints or this major goal. What work will be done? The work that will be done is the migration of 1,000 laptops. What is the time? How long should it take us to complete it? It's going to take us 3 months to complete it. What is the cost? It's 100,000 pounds. So we have that constraint on the project. Those three constraints are typical of any project, and that is exactly what PMI is saying that you need to manage. So they came up with what is project management? Is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques. So you can see the ones in red, bold red, we'll be talking about them today. Knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet the project requirement. This is accomplished via appropriate application and integration logically processed. In a logical process, you have to make sure that you apply your knowledge, you apply your skills, you apply your tools, and you apply your techniques. So you will agree with me that the project I just gave you now, you quickly want to use your knowledge, you want to use your skills, you want to use your tools and your techniques. Then before I forget, we have five. We'll be creating 5 groups for that particular project. We will be presenting these next week. So not all the 5 groups will be presenting the 5. Each group will not present all of those things I gave us to prepare. But you're not sure of which one I'll call you to prepare next week. So you should be ready to talk about any of those next week, Tuesday. Does that make any sense? So for the first 30-45 minutes, that is exactly what we will be talking about. And you can ask, one group can ask the other group questions if it's not clear, because that wasn't the way we viewed it. I know that, so it's going to be open for and the leader of that particular team will be the one presenting, or you can choose who will be presenting within your team for next week. So I'll just pick you to say, you know what, group 1, I want to talk about the lessons learned log, or group 2, I actually want to talk about project mandate next week. So I don't know how the flow will be, but we will do that next week. All right. So remember, we have project life cycle. Project life cycle is what Prince 2 calls processes. Remember, we have 7 processes: start up a project, initiate a project, manage stage boundary, manage product stage, close out the project, directing, and also controlling. So those are the processes from Prince 2. But PMI says no, they are project life cycle. Let's make our life simple. Let us make our life simple. It's a project life cycle. What are we talking about project life cycle? I said this last week, that project life cycle basically is you initiate a project, you plan a project, You execute a project, then you close out a project. You initiate, I'm initiating this project, I am planning this project, I am executing this project. Then after execution of a project, I can now close out the project. Then monitoring and controlling is done all through the project. So what this simple picture is telling you is the red part of this graph, which is initiation, starts all the way from the beginning. And because it is initiation, it's going to end very quickly. Planning is big as well. Planning starts almost immediately when we initiate, and planning must finish at some point where execution will start. Like you can see, the biggest mountain here is executing, because that is where the work is done. That is where the major work is done. You can see executing is big. This is where we're doing majority of the work. Now we now have the closeout. So you can see that someone would ask that, okay, Imole, how come, or how come closing is starting at almost at the middle of the project and not even at the end? Since we're talking about closing, don't forget that there are several deliverables that will be done. Remember, Prince 2 says manage by stage. So when you're managing by stage, meaning you will have done some deliverables that you can say, okay, yes, this deliverable is final, and we're waiting for its integration at the end of a project. So that's why we have closing coming out. And you can see monitoring and controlling. I think I said this last week to say, you know what? Whenever you're cooking, you don't wait, you don't pour because you are, okay, I know the quantity of salt to put, I know the quantity of water to put, I know the quantity of that to put. Doesn't mean you now put everything and now wait until the end of the project or the end of the cooking before you now check if your food is tasty, if water is not too much, if salt is not too much. No, you start monitoring and controlling your variables right from the beginning of the project. And that is why you can see it here. It's starting almost right from the beginning. The blue guy is starting almost right from the beginning, because the moment you start your project, you want to start monitoring and control things. Okay, are we thinking the right way? Are we thinking it right? Are we doing what we should be doing? Okay, are we doing that? That is monitoring and controlling. So monitoring and controlling takes the larger part as well, from start to finish compared to others. So it cuts across all of the project life cycle. So if anybody should wake you up tomorrow to say, you know what, Tunji, how do you think a project should go from start to finish? Well, a project should go from initiation to planning to executing to closing, while monitoring and controlling covers everything. That is the way a project runs. Prince 2 complicated the whole thing. I'll tell you straight up. Prince 2 complicated the whole thing by saying, you know what, you start up a project, you initiate a project, you start controlling a project, you direct it, you manage stage boundaries, you manage stage products, then you close out your project. That is quite complicated to come to think about it. But when you look at this, initiate, plan, execute, and close. Initiate, plan, execute, and close. For some of you that might have done ISO courses before, on ISO courses, you will hear plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. PDCA cycle. Some of you must have heard about PDCA cycle. This is where they all got the PDCA cycle from. Plan, do, check, and act. Let's close it and all that. Okay. So let's now talk about, remember that here, Prince 2 says, a PMI says it is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques. So let's talk about some of those knowledge. Anyway, I've explained this, and that's exactly what I said. You enter into a project phase, you initiate, you plan, you execute. Like you can see, the big bubble that all of them are in is a monitoring and controlling process. That is a big bubble that all of them are inside. So they are all inside monitoring and controlling. All right, let's talk about the knowledge areas. For the knowledge areas, PMI says, you know what, we have 10 knowledge areas. absolutely 10 knowledge areas, meaning these are what we've done everything. Remember, Prince 2 just tells you that we have 7 themes, but PMI says, you know what? No, we are grouping everything into 10 knowledge areas so that we know who is doing what. And what they've done so far is to create job. So if you're on a mega project, each of these knowledge area, we expect you to have someone managing each of these knowledge areas. I'll tell you, one of the projects I worked on, which is a 500 million pounds project with one of the big oil and gas company in the UK, we had one person for each of these knowledge areas, one person managing everything. Now, what are we talking about? Remember when we started, we had Prince 2 says you must justify business justification must always go on, or you need to manage the scope of work properly and all of that. That is what the first one is saying. The first one is saying, you know what, we need to manage the scope. How do we manage? We need to manage the scope to make sure that we are still able to do 1,000 laptops, that we are not doing 900 laptops or 999 laptops. We need to make sure that the scope of work is managed. And managing the scope of work is what Prince 2 was talking about when Prince 2 said, you know what, you need to focus on the product. What is that thing that they ask us to develop? We need to focus on it. So Prince 2, PMI is saying we need to manage scope properly. So the question now is, guys, how do we manage scope? I'll tell you levels or things that Prince 2 says you need to do in order for you, that PMI says you need to do in order for you to manage scope. Next to that is schedule management. If you remember properly, that in Prince 2, one of the themes of Prince 2 is plan. One of those is plan. This is what schedule management is saying. Schedule management is saying, you know what, you need to create a plan. You need to manage time properly. Schedule, another word for schedule, or if you're in America, you get schedule, or how you want to put it. I'll stick to schedule. Schedule is, you can see it as what is called time management. So PMI is saying, you know what, we need to focus, we need to have a skill on how to manage our time. There should be a knowledge on how to manage your time. So time management sometimes is when you bring people on the project to become a planner. When people come to become a planner, what they are coming to do is actually coming to help you manage your time. Cost management was saying that, you know what, because of the project is going to take us £100,000, we need someone to come in and manage, or we need to make sure that we manage the cost properly. Manage the cost in the sense that we're not overspending what we should be spending. We're spending within the budget. So meaning we need to manage the cost to make sure that we are spending within the budget. And how do we do that? We need to make sure that we have a proper estimate. We need to make sure we have a good budget, and we need to make sure we plan how to do it, and we need to make sure we control how to do it. So that is what cost management is saying. Also, PMI says, you know what? To have a successful project, you need to make sure that quality is managed. Remember, I told you on our very first day or second week that quality has 2 definitions on project. Who can remember that? If you can remember those 2 definitions I gave, can you type them? Who can? Who can remember the 2 definitions I gave about quality? Any taker? Alex said great. No, I specifically said that quality is not great. I called that out. I said it, that quality is not great. Oh, thank you very much, admin. Whoever is admin. Admin said fit for purpose. Oh, thank you very much, admin. Yes, those were the 2 words, those were the 2 phrases I used. Fit for purpose or conformance to requirements. Those were the two phrases I used. Sorry. So the admin, can you type your original name? I'm not admin. Okay, fit for purpose or conformance to requirements. Okay, so whenever we're managing quality, what we are trying to manage is to make sure that what we are bringing is fit for purpose, and whatever we're doing, we are conforming to requirements. Okay, so PMI is saying, you know what, you need to make sure that on your project, you are conforming to requirements, and the product or the final or the project result must be fit, must conform to requirement. Thank you. Next to that is, so what I want you to do in your head is start just opposing between Prince 2 and PMI. Prince 2, PMI. Which one is really more detailed? Which one is giving me life? Which one is giving me joy? Which one is actually making me get excited about managing projects properly? And I'll ask that question later on. Okay, so resource management. PMI is saying, you know what, you need to manage your resources. Yes, Prince 2 say that we have to define roles and responsibilities. This guy is saying you need to make sure that resource management is in place. Resource management is, you need to know how to build your team, you need to know how to train your team, you need to know how to acquire the best of the team, you need to plan how to do that, you need to get all that in place. That is what resource management is. So on your project, because you will be employing people, because you will have to employ people to work on your project, you will have to train people to work better on your project, you will have to do all of that. It's saying that, you know what, you must know how to manage resources properly. PMI went further as well to say, you know what, because we will be communicating with everyone on the project. We'll be communicating with the sponsor, we'll be communicating with the project board, we'll be communicating to the team that we're working with, we'll be communicating with external stakeholders. PMI is saying, you know what, as a project manager, you need to know how to manage communication. Your communication management skills or knowledge must be up here. All right. So PMI went further as well to say, you know what, you need to know how to manage risk on your project. Remember, Prince 2 also said one of these themes is risk management. So PMI is also saying you need to be able to manage risk. Managing risk is it an opportunity or is it a threat? So a risk can either be positive or negative. So we're saying that you need to know how to manage it. How do you manage it? How do you respond? How do you do your qualitative risk analysis? How do you do your quantitative risk analysis? How do you identify risk? That is what the risk management part is saying, that as a project manager, you must know how to do all of these. Next to that is procurement. Definitely we'll be procuring things. We'll be signing contracts. We'll be buying things. We'll be negotiating. So PMI is saying, you know, as a project manager, you must have a good knowledge about how to negotiate. You must have a good knowledge about contract. What kind of contract should I go in? With this vendor? What kind of contract should I not go with this vendor? And all that. Okay, yes. Does communication include managing the other project? Yes, absolutely. Because on your project, let's assume you're doing a program. You're working on a program. When you're working on a program, you're working with several projects. So definitely, as a project manager, if another project is dependent on you, you will definitely need to communicate with that particular project manager or people that are working within that project. If they are dependent on you, you're dependent on them. You need to manage that parallel communication as well. Then the second to the last one is saying that you must know how to manage stakeholder as a project manager. You will definitely have different stakeholders on your project. You need to understand them. And while you're understanding them, you need to be able to manage those stakeholders properly. And if you are able to do all of these, it's saying that and using your tools and techniques, your project will become a success at the end of the day. It will be a success. So the last one says, so you can see that long bar, this long bar with that arrow, that is a major task of a project manager. A project manager must be able to see my scope management knowledge, my schedule management knowledge, my cost management knowledge, my quality management knowledge, my resource management knowledge, my communications management knowledge, my risk management knowledge, my procurement management knowledge, my stakeholders management. I must be able to put everything together and make sure that my project is a success. That is the role of a project manager. So let's go deeper into each of these knowledge areas and see how PMI has simplified life for us to say, you know what, whenever you're managing scope as a project manager, this is what you should be looking at. And you remember I said it earlier on that if you're on a mega project, it is very, very possible for each of these knowledge areas to have someone that is managing it for you. A typical example is scope management. For scope management, I will bring in a business analyst. I'll bring in a business analyst to say, you know what, this is what the stakeholders' needs and expectation is. How do we translate this scope into actual product? So I'll bring in a business analyst to come and help us to actually get proper requirement elicitation and make sure that, yes, we are delivering what the stakeholders' needs or expectation is. For schedule management, I'll bring in a project planner or a program planner on the job that knows how to use MS Project, Primavera, Astapower Project to come and help us plan, to direct how we need to plan properly. I will bring in a finance analyst, a project finance analyst, to come and manage the cost management part for us. I will bring in a quality assurance or a project assurance person to come and manage quality management for me. If it's a mega project, I'll bring in a project HR person to come and help us manage resource management. I'll bring in an HR person to come and help us. On this particular project, I need a PMO HR, someone that has understanding of project, even though the person is an HR person, but has got a very good understanding of how to manage a project and how to work within a PMO. I'll bring in a comms manager, a communication manager to come and work for me. If it's a mega project, I need a comms manager. And I've worked on projects where I had loads of comms manager. I've worked, there are 4 projects that I've worked in the past where they were comms manager. At the moment, I do the role of a comms manager as a PMO manager where I am. I do the role of a comms manager as well, just to make sure that information newsletter is developed, information are getting out to the stakeholders as I went in. I'll bring in a risk manager. I'll bring in a risk manager to come and help us manage the risk on the project properly. If the project is mega, while I will bring in a procurement person, someone that is into procurement, someone that understands contracts, very well, commercial guy that understands contracts, legal. It could be legal. That understand what a contract, that understand negotiation. Someone with both commercial and legal experience. Combine both together. And stakeholders management, unfortunately, there is no one you can bring in to do that for you as a project manager. That is your major role. That is your major role with the integration to make sure that you are pulling everybody together to work on this. Most times, the PMO manager works as the project integration manager. If you have a PMO manager, the person will work on that to pull everybody together and work with the project manager who is managing stakeholders to make sure that the project is a success. Does that make sense? Any question? Okay, seems that there's no question to ask. Can someone just type yes so that I know I'm still in this room and not like what happened when I joined? Excellent. Thank you, Joseph. Okay, I can see that. Okay, so the person Victoria is asking that these resources can only be obtained for bigger. Well, it's dependent on the budget. It's actually dependent on the budget you have for your projects, basically. Trust me, I'm on a project at the moment. While the project is a 23 million pounds project, We're not having all of that. All we have is a program manager, myself as a PMO manager, one PMO analyst, one project planner, and we have 7 project managers. That's all. That's all we've got. And it's a 23 to 24 million pounds project. Think about it. So it's not really that massive. The one I spoke about was a 500 million pounds project that we had all of these people working on the project because we had over 230 people working on that particular project. I was brought in as a program planner. I was brought in to come and manage the plan, to come and manage the schedule management. So I was just managing the plan strictly for over 18 months. That was all I was doing on the project, while someone else was managing communication, someone else, because we had to communicate to everybody around 18 regions across the world. Okay, admin is asking that the 7 project manager, is that for each of the knowledge area? No, it's not for each of the knowledge area. You don't get project manager for each of the knowledge area. You get people that are competent in managing each of those knowledge area. Don't forget. So the 7 project managers we have is because we have 7 projects that are rolled into one. Now, the first project we have is we have the civils and building project. We have racking, we have sprinklers, we have utilities, we have 235-liter line, we have 1-liter cob line, and we have the SBOI transfers. So you can see we have 7 projects, and we need to apply all of those knowledge areas I spoke about, all of the 10 knowledge areas in each of those projects. So there was no need to have one person to come and manage the plan. I've got a planner to manage all of the plans. I've got myself to manage comms, manage the comms, manage the scope, and my program manager is managing the scope. I don't have to manage that. I'm there to do human resources. I'm there to do, my program manager is good with procurement. He's the one that is doing the procurement for the whole project. So it's all about sharing the whole task, sharing those 10 knowledge areas within ourselves, even though we're not calling it, we are not expressly calling it out as those 10 knowledge areas. We're just calling it as our roles and responsibilities on this particular project. So the 10 knowledge areas I spoke about. So Dami is asking that what is my role as a PMO manager? My role as a PMO manager was, first of all, to come in and get the governance for them, how the reporting will be, get the governance for them, set up the governance, set up how risk will be managed on the project, set up how risk will be managed on the project, set up how issues, majorly how cardiac, and I think we'll get into cardiac tonight, how all those will be managed. So that is my run. It's because it's like I said, it's more of a glorified role. It's more of a PMO analyst role, but because you're managing 7 projects as a whole, if it was a PMO is only responsible to manage 1 project or 2 projects. Because we're managing 7 projects, I'm working with 7 project managers and all that. So because of that, yeah, they had a manager at the back of it, and well, it's good for me. It's good for the CV. Apart from that, there is nothing major. Yeah, I handle the comms. I handle reporting as well, from top down to the PMO analyst that is working with me on the reporting. And we manage RACI because we didn't have each of those guys, and I manage the finance as well. Okay, so someone is asking, it appears that PMI isn't keen on business justification as a knowledge area, or is it part of the scope coverage? It's part of the scope coverage, and yes, you're right that they are not that keen. And I think I said this on the very first day about PMI. So PMI is saying that, you know what, the project, like Prince 2 is saying, the business case, the project manager should do the business case starting from the beginning to say you get a mandate. The project PMI is saying no. But project manager is not a business person. Project manager doesn't really understand all of this. We'll bring in someone to come and do the business justification for us, create the business case, do all of that. They will bring in a consultant to do all of that, do the business case. And if we see the business case and we can see that, yes, this business can go ahead, we now give you what is called a project charter. So project mandate for Prince 2, project charter for PMI. So project charter is that first document that comes in a project to tell you how what the project is or what the project manager is. They are keen on it, but at the same time, they are not as pronounced as Prince 2 is pronounced. Because don't forget that the first thing I showed you, Prince 2 is more concerned about what is the project output. What exactly is the project output? So if we're talking about the project output, then we're more concerned about, okay, what is the business justification for this before we can go ahead with it. So yes, they are more business oriented. Why this guy is saying, you know what, we need to understand how we have a project to deliver. How do we go from A to B to C? So PMI believes that you must have done your homework right from the beginning before you can start thinking of going through the project. Okay. How sizable is this project in line with the scope of, as a PMO, especially with the cost implication that might be involved? Like I said, it was a 23.7 million pounds project. That's not massive. That is not really massive across seven projects, or 23.7 million pounds program across 7 projects. So that is not really massive. And don't forget that when we talk about cost, we're not actually the one releasing the money. It's the corporate organization that is releasing the money. What we're just doing is we're managing it, getting the contract, raising POs. You raise your purchase order in SAP. You make sure that, yeah, contractor is paid early. You make sure that, yes, the negotiation is doing well. The time allotted for PO maturity is in place, and you are able to say that, yes, we said we'll spend 10 million pounds for the first 6 months. How are we doing it? Okay, that project still has money. This particular project I've overspent. Can we juggle things together? Can we get the approval to juggle the money together, since it's still within the same part of the program? So that is what we do whenever I'm saying that we're managing cost. All right. So we're saying that for integration, I'll take integration last, because like I said, integration just integrates everything together. So for scope, PMI says, you know what? You need to plan how to manage scope. As a project manager, understand how you want to manage scope. How do you want to manage scope? I want to manage scope by making sure that the scope is well defined. I want to manage scope by making sure that the acceptance criteria is well known from the beginning. I want to manage scope by making sure that all the known risks concerning this project are documented. I want to manage scope by making sure that we set boundaries, we set constraints. What are the boundaries? You can deliver these, but you can't go beyond that. These are the project boundaries. So it is when you're planning your scope that you start defining what are those things and all that. Then from there, you go to collect requirements. Now, someone will ask me that collect requirement, elicit requirement. This should be the job of business analyst. Exactly what I'm saying. According to PMI expect a project manager to be able to manage how to go about collecting requirements to make sure that everything is well done. But the good news is, from the PMBOK that should have been released on the 1st of July, but that will be released in December, PMI2 is coming to terms to say some of these activities are not project managers' activities. They are business analyst activities. So they are bringing in, I've seen the first review of it, they are bringing in some roles under the business analyst, incorporating the project manager into and business analyst role together already. Okay, so we're saying that you have to define your scope. Now that you've gone to all of the stakeholders, you've gone to stakeholder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you've gotten different requirements from them that is still going to tie into the scope of work to be done. So a typical on our project, on the project I gave you, you've gone around to say, you know what, yes, Mrs. Mayor, I'm here as a project manager to migrate all the laptops. As you know, we're migrating all the laptops in your organization, the 1,000 laptops from Office 2010 to Office 365. What are your expectations? What are your expectations concerning this particular project? Mrs. Mayor can tell you, you know what? I want all the icons. I want all the icons for PowerPoint to be on my desktop. I want all the icons to be on the desktop. I don't just want to open it and scroll and all of that. I just want, by the time I open my laptop, I want all the icons to be on the desktop. He said, okay, that's fine. Someone is saying, you know what, when I open my Windows 10, I don't want to scroll through the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I want to be able to see all of those icons there and all that. Okay, someone is saying, you know what, on my stuff, I want auto recovery switched on. I want auto recovery switched on my Excel spreadsheet. Whenever I open my spreadsheet, if it should crash, I want the auto recovery to be switched on. Don't forget that nobody is making any changes to the initial scope of work. What they are trying to say at this point is they're just giving you their own requirement. Does that make any sense? Remember, this is actually the work of a business analyst to be able to make user experience better. A business analyst is there to interpret what the guy is saying or what the users are saying, and also translate to what the developer will do in order to make user experience better. So that is what you're doing when you collect a requirement. So you've collected all these requirements. The next thing you now need to do is to sit down. Let's now define this scope properly. It was a one-liner. The one-liner scope we had was migrate Office 2010 to Office 365. But you want to agree with me that the scope of work should be more than that. So you have a one-liner that is coming from your project charter. You are not seated, and all you're doing at this point is to say, now let us define the scope proper. After you've defined the scope, the next thing you want to do is to say, you know what, let's create our WBS. We're still talking about scope here. Let's create our WBS. What is WBS? WBS means work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure. For some of you that wants to do PMP exam, this is all you need. This blue chart here is all you need to pass your PMP exam. If you know everything in this chart in detail, to know what are the information behind each of those boxes, there are a lot of information behind all of those boxes. You're good to go with your PMP exam. And it's well recognized all over the world, well recognized in Australia, Canada, the whole of Americas, really, as well as some part of Africa and Nigeria. It's well recognized in Nigeria as well. So if you want to go for that. So we're saying let's create WBS. So we're saying that, you know what, we now have a defined scope. Let's break down the work to be done into a manageable component. So WBS is work breakdown structure. It is just the hierarchical decomposition of the project scope into more manageable components. The hierarchical decomposition, I'm sure all of you will have seen a WBS before. You won't just know, oh, this is a WBS. Most of you have seen an organogram before. Organogram is the organizational breakdown structure from the CEO or the MD to the directors, from the directors to the head of, from the head of to the managers. That is what is called an organizational breakdown structure, OBS. We now have what we call the WBS, a work breakdown structure. So a work breakdown structure is we have 1,000 PC migration. For the 1,000 PC migration, we can now break it down to purchase of the software, installation of the software, rebooting of the software. And you want to agree with me that under purchase, there are loads of activities to be done under purchase. You can say raise PO, count the number of what you need, and all that. So there are activities. What you're trying to do is you're trying to break down this work into more manageable components. So after you've done that, after you've broken down your work into more manageable components, you want to say, okay, guys, let's try and see what are the other things we need to do. So the guys on this row here, these are the first guys you're doing on the project. All of these guys, you want to create plan for everything. Remember, we just created plan on how to manage score. We need to create plan on how to manage our schedule. Plan on how to manage schedule is just saying that, you know what, guys, we need to plan this project. How do we plan this project? A typical schedule I did for the project I'm on at the moment is, and if you go on PMI website, they have different templates and formats there. So, and samples. I said, you know what, on this particular project, we need to set ground rules. So a plan schedule management or schedule management plan or strategy is just a ground rule. A ground rule that says that, you know what, this is our WBS. This is how we will break down the work. We will, any activity that is more than 20 days, we need to break it down. So on our plan, I don't want to see activities that are more than 20 days. On our plan, I want to make sure that all the activities are action words. On the plan, I want to make sure that every deliverables has a milestone. On the plan, I want to make sure that there is a predecessor and a successor dependency attached to each of those stuff. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm just telling you how we want to manage our plan. And I'm saying, you know what? The person gift is the one that will be responsible for updating this plan. So it is inside your schedule management plan that you will have all of this documented, right? Okay, now you need to manage, how do we manage cost? What is our threshold? So while we're talking about plan as well, it is within the plan that we'll talk about our threshold as well. Remember when we under Prince 2, we said manage by exception. Managing by exception is all about tolerances. So within our project management, our schedule management plan, I'm saying, you know, guys, on this particular project, we have plus or minus 10 days. If the project is slipping by 10 days is too much. If the project is slipping by 1 week, it is still acceptable. We can still manage that. But the moment it is more than 5 days, we need to escalate whatever it is. So it is inside your schedule management plan that you document all of these about your tolerances, about how you want to manage the plan. Also, this will be documented. Say weekly is when we will have an update with all the project managers weekly. Okay, so now you have your cost management plan. You do your cost management plan. You develop your quality management plan. You develop your resource management plan. So all of these things I'm asking you that you need to develop. You don't have to start all over again to start saying that, okay, what should be in there? What should be in there? If you go on Google, at the moment, as we're talking now, if you go on Google and you type in cost management plan template, I'm sure 1,000,001 templates will come out for you. All you just need to do is download one and adapt it to whatever your project is saying. You don't have to start developing one all over again. But if you're going into an organization, that is the first thing you need to ask, to say, you know what, do we have templates within that we normally use it within this organization? So you're coming up as a PMO person or as a project manager into an organization. Your first day, they've showed you around, they've introduced you to people, and your project manager or your program manager says, you know what, Rita, we need to start. We need to create a template we need to create a document. We need to create how to manage cost on this particular project. We need a cost management plan or strategy on this particular project. So it is not left to you to ask that, you know what, okay, do we have a template within this organization? Do we have a template within the organization that we've used in the past or they are always using? Don't forget, you're just coming. Your program manager can say, oh, yes, we've got an organizational process asset, or we have a central PMO. We have a central PMO, and within that central PMO, there are templates that you can use. It can be on their SharePoint. It can be on their shared drive. It can be on anywhere. So you just ask them, and the moment they say they have, then you can go in there and pick that one up and fine tune it to what you have on your project. If the organization do not have any, then it is good for you to go on Google, download something on Google, and implement that within your own organization. But if your organization is project management inclined, they will always have a template that they've used in the past, or they will have consulted the likes of Capital, the likes of iCentral, the likes of Arthur Anderson to come in and develop some of these things for them. Okay, so that is what you need to do. So I'm sure some of you, if you can Google that, you will see a lot of templates and you can see everything I'm talking about within the template. So you have your plan for each of those 10 knowledge areas, each of those 9 knowledge areas. Now, develop project management plan is now the combination of all the 9. Combination of all of these guys put together will now give us a project management plan. And that is what becomes the Bible for your project. So the Bible for your project is a project management plan. Is that every document that, you know what, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for how to do this. I'm looking for what was said, the way we would do this. I'm looking for what was agreed on how to do this. It is inside the project management plan that you will see that. And the project management plan is a combination of all of that. Makes sense? So you go to time management. I'm going to say this and I want you to keep it because we will still use it very, very soon. So next to that is we need to, under time management, under project time management or schedule management, what do we do? Like I said, one of the projects I worked on then was coming in as a planner. What did I do when I came in as a planner? When I came in as a planner to the organization, or as a PMO with this project I'm on as a PMO manager, when I came in, because I came in, developed the whole thing before they brought in a planner. What exactly was the initial role? I came in to say, you know what, all the 7 project managers, can I get you guys into a room? I want you guys to be in the room because all I want to do is I want us to define the activities we need to do in order for us to achieve this particular project. What are the key activities we need to do? Yes, I know that proper implementation of a project is still 4 months away. That was last year, September, when I joined them. It's still 4 months away, but based on your experience, based on what you've done in the past, based on the project team, you should know exactly what needs to be done concerning your different projects. So they're saying that, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. All I'm doing is I'm documenting everything that they're saying they need to do. That is, at that stage, what I'm doing is I am defining the activities with them. With all the project managers, we'll define the activity. So as a PMO person, if there's no planner on your project, this is your role. You need to make sure that you get the plans out of the project managers. If you're a project manager, it is your role to make sure that you have a working plan. And how do you get a working plan? You get a working plan with your team. So the way I was asking Mike, who was a project manager, the way I was asking Mike to say, Mike, okay, you say you will do the dry goods warehouse, you do the finished goods warehouse, you do the car park, you will do the boneyard, you will do all of that. Okay, the way I'm asking this guy all of these questions, this guy is saying, as a project manager, is saying, you know what, I don't really have all of this information. I need to ask my colleague Mark. I need to ask my colleague Phil. I need to ask my team member Steven or Steve and all of that. So you can see that he's working with his team to define all the activities that needs to be done. And if you look at it, one of the work I gave to you, one of the work I gave to you tonight is say I need a detailed project plan. So this is a process I want you to go with whenever you're doing your detailed project plan. First of all, you need to define your activities. After defining your activities, you now need to say, you know what, okay, yes, these are all the activities we need to do on this particular project. We need to procure, we need to do this, we need to raise PO, we need to sign contracts, we need to do that, we need to, you've defined all of those activities. After defining all of those activities, you now say, you know what is next? Next to that is we need to now sequence activities. Sequencing activities is not saying that, you know what, Mike, okay, I understand, these are all the 200 activities you feel we need to do on this project. What activity comes before what? Which of these activities can we do together? Which of these activities must finish together? Which of these activities do we need to do and wait before we can start the next activity? So what you're trying to do at this point is you're sequencing your activity to know what activity comes first, what activity can we do together, what activity can finish together, what activity can start together in order for us to actually get a critical path out of this. I know someone was asking me about critical path last week. So this is where your critical path is now coming out whenever you're sequencing your activities. Okay, so after you've sequenced your activities, you say, you know what, that one comes before what, that one comes before that. The next question I will now ask is, okay, Mr. PM, Yes, exactly. Admin said mapping out dependencies. Exactly. That's what we are doing whenever we are sequencing activity. We're just mapping out what are dependencies, what depends on what. Is it a start, finish to start? Is it a start to start? Is it a finish to finish? We'll talk about all of these in detail today or next week if we can't get there. But next week, Tuesday will be our last class. All right. So after you've done your sequencing activity, you now need to say, okay, guys, I understand we've said we need to do activity A before activity B, then we can do B and C together. Now, guys, we now need to estimate activity duration. Activity A, how long do you guys think it will take us? The guy is saying 5 days. So as a planner or as a PMO analyst on the project, you are documenting all of this on the planning tool agreed by the organization. Is it MS project that the organization is using? Is it Excel spreadsheet? Is it Primavera? Is it Astapower project? Is it projectmanagement.com or some other ones you can think about? So we're now saying that that one will take us 10 days, that one will take us 5 days, that will take us 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, 10 days, 20 days, days. So that is at the end of the day, you now have a working project plan. So combination of all of these four will now give us a schedule, a detailed schedule that we can say, guys, let us now baseline this plan. So like I'm saying now, this can take you, I'll give you a typical example. On the project I am at the moment, it has taken us 4 months, 4 months so far to get a detailed workable project plan. So it is not something you get in one day. There are some projects, I've worked on a particular project before where all of us, 10 of us on that particular project went away to somewhere in Hertfordshire. From London, we went away for 1 week, locked ourselves up in one hotel for 1 week, all because we want to get a working plan out for our project. So we went away, locked ourselves up, big organization, sponsored it. You know what, guys, just go away, go and do your planning brainstorming session, planning workshop. They took us all the way. 10 of us went into one particular place. We were waking up, sleeping. We're just sleeping for five hours every day. We wake up, we're in the conference room already with our post sheet, just pasting everything on the wall, all because we want to get a workable plan. And after we came out, after 5 days, Monday to Friday, we came out with a plan and everybody were happy and we're able to execute all of that just because we went away from all the distractions and we're able to get the plan out of the project. Does that make it? So at the end of the day, we baseline the plan and we say, this is a workable project plan. So that is the same process you have to do for costing. You have to estimate your cost. After you've done your estimation to say, okay, that one might cost us this, we estimate that. At the end of the day, we now get a project budget out of the project. Good. So with all of that, so from there, we'll talk about risk later on as well. So that is how you manage your project. Same thing goes with human resources. If you see human resources, as a project manager, you need to make sure that you plan how you recruit on your project. You need to make sure that you acquire your resources. You need to make sure that you develop your team. Develop a team. That guy needs that knowledge. You want this guy, or you want Ulokwe to be able to manage risk very well on your project. Are we sure that Tolulope has got to require skill to manage that? You can quickly book a course for Tolulope to say, you know what, Tolulope, go through that course because I want you to manage the risk on my project. So that's what we're saying. Developing your team, you need to develop the skill of your team. After acquiring them, you need to develop them. And while you're developing your team, also, this is where team building comes up. The forming, the norming, the storming, the performing comes in because there will be conflict. You need to be able to manage those. This is where you managing human resources. This is how you will manage your conflict when conflict arises. Then you go into your communication. You need to manage communication. You need to monitor who is getting what, manage it. Are we receiving the right information from people? A typical example is what happened earlier today, because I know that I can't be talking without getting feedback. And I say, you know what? It's not going to be okay for me if I'm talking and I'm not getting feedback from people. it's going to be very stressful. And a lot of project managers work that with it. They're just one-way traffic. They just want to deliver without talking to people and all of that. No, it doesn't work that way. When we talk about managing communication, it's a two-way thing. Whenever you're communicating, there should be feedback. Yes, we like that. We don't like this. Yeah, can you move that? Can you move this? So as a project manager, you need to know how to manage that as well. Any question? So what I just spoke about in 45 minutes, basically, it's a 5-day course. This is a 5-day course. What I just summarized in 45 minutes. So apologies for that. Like I said, you don't need it since you're not doing certification exam. You don't need to go into depth of it like that, except you're interested in doing the certification. Then you can reach out. You can reach out directly to whoever, to best organization I think they're doing it. Any question, please? I'll give you 3 minutes or 2 minutes now. The PMP is $555. It has been $555 since I knew it 14 years ago, up until now. Stays at $555. That is for the certification, but the training in the training in the UK is quite expensive. It's between £1,000 and £1,200. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, it is 60,000 naira. Strange, right? Okay, admin is asking me that can we add one more days to the normal completion days to allow for force majeure? Is it on the project? I don't understand. Admin, what are you talking about? I know this is not the Blue Sky Citadel admin, and that was why I asked for your name, for your actual name the other time. What is your actual name? So that I won't be calling you admin. What are the books you can recommend? Yeah, for Florence and Ian, they're saying, what are the books? The main book you need is what is called the PMBOK 6th edition at the moment. So if you want to write your exam before December, PMBOK 6th edition, and you can always download that on the internet. That is all you need to read. But unfortunately, they will not register you for exam if you do self-study. They will only register you for exam if you go through a registered educational provider, an REP. Okay, Olayinka as the admin. All right, thank you. In the project you gave us, we will require SME knowledge for migration of. Yes, you will. Dami, yes, you will require SME knowledge, and that is left to you to go and see who is the SME you want to recruit. You can recruit YouTube as your SME. You can go on YouTube and understand how migration is done. You can go on Google and type it in and understand how migration is done. But I'm giving you the opportunity to make a lot of assumptions. See yourself as a project manager who needs to do that and make a lot of assumptions. The risk, just assume that there's a risk. Because if you have to think about it, you will just say, oh, you know what, there's no risk on my project. I'll just slot in the flash drive, download the Office 365, log out and dump the laptop. No, I want you to put yourself in there and think deep into it and make assumptions on what risk could happen. Okay, so Yinka, please, can you explain yourself properly with can we add more days? Are you saying that we should not finish next week? Is that what you're talking about? So that we can claim force majeure. Okay, D Lawa is asking that after the training. No, after the training, you don't have to sit for the exam immediately. You sit for the exam whenever you feel you're ready. Like when I wrote the exam, I wrote PMP in 2009. I wrote it in 2009. I did my training in June and I didn't write it until December. I didn't say this on the first day. Let me quickly say this for PMP. Now that we're there, I don't normally say this because I don't always see people interested. Because like I said, this class is not really for certification, so I don't really dwell on certification. That's another class entirely. But for this is for that is, if you're a graduate, which I believe that everybody on this call are a graduate or about to graduate. So if you're a graduate with your first degree, all you need is 3 years work experience. So you need to go on PMI website and put in your work experience and all the work you've done in the last 3 years. So you process it and they will come back to you in 5 years to say, well, yes, you are eligible to write PMP, and they will process it for you. If you're yet to finish your university, you need 5 years work experience. That means you can use your secondary school certificate. You need your 5 years work experience in order for you to now write your PMP. But I'm giving everybody this offer to say, you know what, reach out to me on LinkedIn if you're ready to write it and you're finding it difficult to process your application. I can help you to process your application. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will help you to process your application. So that's whenever you're ready to write your exam and you want to process your application, I can process you. I can help you to guide you on how to process. No, not that I will process your application for you. No, I will guide you on how to process your application. That's the right word to use. So we've spoken about all the methodologies. We've spoken about all the framework, the PMP, the Prince2. Well, I've worked in an organization where they combined both Prince2 and PMI framework together. They were using both. You saw project charter. Instead of project manager, they use project charter. Instead of scope statement, they use project initiation document. Instead of strategy, they were using plans. So different organizations with different ways of administering project. And I can assure you that even most of the organizations will say that they use Prince2. Majority don't use Prince2. Majority will just fine-tune Prince2 and also what they think is given out there, put all of that together and make it work for their project. And they will tell you, yeah, we set Prince2 tailored to suit project environment. Yes. So it's not majorly, but like I said, okay, Dilawa is saying I can testify to that. Yeah, it's a combination of different things basically that they use. So don't really, but the only thing that is just advisable is a lot of them will say that if you have Prince2 Foundation on your CV, at least they understand that you have a formal education on what project management guidelines are from a reputable organization or from a reputable awarding body. That is just what it is all about. Project cardiac management. Project cardiac management is guidelines for RAID management. So we have, when I say cardiac, I formed this word because what you will always hear out is RAID. But as a PMO person, you're definitely doing more than RAID. You're doing cardiac. So I named it cardiac because it's the heart. This is the heart of the project. This is the heart of the project. And the heart of the project, you want to make sure that the heart is always beating. The heart is always breathing. Nothing is happening to the heart. So that's why I call it the cardiac management. And what is cardiac? The first thing you need to do, the first C stands for constraint. There will be constraint you need to manage on the project. The next one stands for actions. Constraint, actions, risk, dependencies, issues. Then we have assumption. Then we have change control. So as a PMO, this is your basic responsibility, including the plans we spoke about earlier on. You need to know how to manage the plan. I need to know how to manage these 7 guys. Actually, it is 8. I'm missing a D. There's a decision. There's a decision, there is a D that's called the decision there. So it's cardiac. So it's double D. So we have constraints, assumption, risk, dependency, decision, issues, action, and change control. So let's talk about how to manage all of these guys now. What exactly are we talking about when we talk about cardiac? We need to manage risk. Risk basically is specific event which might occur and does have a positive or negative impact. Remember I said positive risk is what? Who can type it? Type what is positive risk? I gave a name to positive risk earlier on. What's a positive risk? A positive risk is called what? Who is typing? Opportunity. Thank you. What's a negative risk? Threat. Thank you, Yomi. So on your project, you will definitely see that what we talk about is threat, threat, threat. Whenever you hear risk, what we always talk about is threat, threat, threat. Yeah, it is what it is, because opportunity, yeah, you accept opportunity is good, you're happy. But when it comes to threat, then the red flag is on. So we can always have opportunities as well. That's why we say have a positive or negative impact on your project. Each risk will be probability associated, and we'll talk more about that. Then you have your assumption, you have your risk, you have your issues, then you have your dependencies. Now, like I said earlier on, what's the objective of this particular session? This session, which we will just do the introductory part of it today, and we can continue into planning. We'll talk about constraint assumption today and stakeholders management, and we'll talk about proper RAID next week. So we should be able to differentiate between assumptions, constraints, risk, issues, dependencies, reporting, change control, and stakeholders management. Understand why they need to be identified and monitored, and understand how to identify and analyze and also manage them. All right. So let's talk about the main culprit. The main culprit here, what we have got already is initial constraint. What have we got? What have we got already? We spoke about when I was talking about Prince 2, we spoke about the project brief. Now we'll talk about procedure to identify risk, issues, and dependencies. We'll talk about the procedure to manage those risks, issues, and dependencies. Because, like I said, as a PMO person, when you go on JobServe, go on CV Library, go on City Jobs, go on Indeed.co.uk, go on read.co.uk, go on all those job portals and type in PMO. Something that will jump up to you is this person must be able to manage RAID. This person must be able to handle RAID log. This person must be able to do this. This person, and you always hear RAID as a PMO person. So, and that is exactly what we're dealing with now, to say how as a PMO, how do I get on the job and make sure that I am managing the RAID log properly? So, or as a project manager, so we're going to do it in two ways. I'm going to tell you that as a PMO person, what you need is, as a PMO person, if you're a PMO analyst, you're a PMO coordinator, you're a PMO not lead, you're a PMO administrator, you're just there to make sure that all of these things are documented, and to some appreciable level, you can challenge some of the things that the project managers will be raising. So, because the project manager will be the one to raise the risk during the meeting, you're making sure that you're documenting it and you're following it up. But as a PMO lead, as a project manager, or as a PMO manager, you are expected to be able to analyze risk, to be able to respond and profile response to risk. So it's another level away from PMO analyst. The PMO analyst is there to document and challenge few bits on the project concerning risk. But as a PMO manager or as a PMO lead, you are expected to be able to analyze. You're not just documenting, you're analyzing, you are bringing strategy on how to manage those risks, and you're having conversation with the project manager on a daily basis, including you documenting those risks and escalating those risks. Okay, so that is that. Let's talk about stakeholders management. Someone, I think it was Fumi Ogida, if I'm correct, that was asked about. She asked a question on day 2 or day 3 concerning if you're asked in an interview, or how do you manage stakeholder, a stubborn stakeholder, or how do you work with difficult people? If I can remember very well, how do you work with difficult people and all of that? All they're asking you is how are you going to manage stakeholders on this particular project? So, who is a stakeholder? Okay, that's Nyayo. Tunji, okay, sorry, Tunji said he was the one that asked. Okay, so what is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is either an individual, group, organization who is impacted by the outcome of a project, meaning everyone that is working on that particular project, everyone that will be affected by that particular project, everyone that is working on that particular project is called a stakeholder. And you want to agree with me that the interest of stakeholders will always be different. Interest in the sense that the interest of stakeholder A will be different from stakeholder B. So on your project, you need to understand, how do I develop a stakeholders management plan? Remember, when we spoke about PMI framework, PMI framework said you need to develop a stakeholder management plan. To say, how do you develop a stakeholder management plan? This is what you need to understand. That one, in order to manage the stakeholder relationship, it is imperative that one, identify the stakeholders associated with your project. So you need to have what we call the stakeholders register. So you need to identify the stakeholders that are associated with your project to say, Tunji A, Bolaji, that, D Lawal, Samad, Yomi, Ola, Gift, all of these people are on my project. So you've documented all of them, you've identified them, analyze stakeholders' attitude to and potential need for involvement. So you now need to say, okay, how is this person going to get involved? What's the role of this person on this project? So you have a stakeholders register log. So if you can do that on the side, if you're using your laptop or even you're using your phone, you can just go on Google and just type in stakeholders register or stakeholders management plan. You will see register, and you can familiarize yourself with that. You establish the stakeholder management strategy to increase the support. How do I get stakeholder B on board? How do I get stakeholder C to buy into this project? How do I get stakeholder D to buy into this project? You will agree with me that to get a particular stakeholder on your project, maybe all the stakeholder needs is just regular information every week. There are some people like that. They will give you trouble if you're not telling them what they need to, how the project is going on, and not that they want to do anything with that information, but they just want to feel important. Tell me what you're doing on your project. If you don't tell me, your project is not going to succeed. Or some people are saying that, as a project manager, you need to come and pay homage to me in my office first, because if you don't pay homage to me in my office, your project will not succeed. I will make sure your project doesn't succeed. We have different types of stakeholders, and as a project manager, you need to be able to know how to manage them. And before you know how to manage them, you have to first of all understand who is that person and all that. Yeah, we'll come to Racy very soon, and Inaya, very well. We'll come to Racy. So, what exactly do you need to do? First of all, remember we said the first thing you need to do is identify your stakeholders. Identify your stakeholders. What are the areas to consider when you're identifying your stakeholders? You have to consider within the organization. We have to consider which stakeholders will impact my schedule, who are the suppliers, what could cause risk, what are the major resources that I need. So these are just examples of how you want, but whenever you get on a project, there are different ways you can actually identify who your stakeholders is. The first thing I tell people, or the first thing I do when I get on a project, is I open up a stakeholders register and I start documenting every name that comes from the people I'm working with. Because don't forget that the first thing they will do for you on your first day of work, And your first day on a particular project is to introduce you to everybody on the floor. And I can guarantee you, they will introduce you to everybody. You can only remember 2 to 3 names, no matter how smart you think you are. All the names in your head is 2 to 3 names. And people might take offense that, but I introduced myself to you. How come you can't remember my name and all that? You understand? So what I tell people is the moment someone introduces, the moment, and majorly what happens is, okay, if you're lucky, they will all be, it might be maybe on your first day is the first team meeting for the day, and you're in the team meeting and they are saying you have to talk back. Whenever they are introducing you, or maybe your body or your line manager is one introducing, say, you know what, I just joined the team today. Can you all introduce yourself, please? And the person say, my name is Ryan. I'm the procurement manager. Or my name, you can say, my name is Ryan. The moment they say, my name is Ryan, you have to say it back. Ryan, so what's your role on this project? Do you mind telling me what your role is on this project and all that? What you're trying to do is, and you have your pen and paper just to write their names down, their role down. Then later you can go and read up about them within the, or you can ask your line manager to say, Ryan, I didn't get what Ryan does on this project properly. You have to talk back, call their name back. It shows, it's like I say, it's all about stakeholders management. It's all about psychology. The moment you call their names back, make sure you're calling the name back correctly, please. or if it's a funny name, just ask politely, am I saying it correctly? Or do you mind? Am I saying it correctly? Or is it a particular way you want me to say it? Engage. What you are trying to do is you're managing stakeholders. It's a way of managing stakeholders well. Does that make any sense? Okay, let's go ahead. So how do you manage stakeholders? There's something we call the stakeholders management grid, the stakeholders matrix, or the stakeholders management grid. On your stakeholders management grid, you can see this. It's a power stroke interest grid. Power stroke interest grid is showing, and you can have power stroke influence grid as well. So there are 2 types of grid. You can have power stroke interest or power stroke influence. So let's talk about this power stroke interest grid. Power stroke interest is saying that, okay, stakeholder B. What is the power of stakeholders B? Okay, let's use the Blue Sky Citadel as an example. Deji is a provost of Citadel of Blue Sky Citadel. What the project management training? What is the power of Deji of Blue Sky Citadel? So we now need to understand. Okay, we've identified Deji. What is the power of Deji on this particular project from 1 to 5? Let's think about it. Okay, how many of you know Deji? What's the power of Deji on this particular training? Let's look at what power does he have on this particular training from 1 to 5. 1 mean the lowest, 5 mean the highest. Type it. 5. Dilawa says 5. Excellent.
5.
Good. Excellent. So we've documented his interest to be 5. I mean, his power to be 5. What do we think his interest is? His interest from 1 to 5. Do we think he's interested in this? Do we think he's really interested? Personally, do we think he's interested? Dilawa says yes. Well, I would disagree to say, you know what? There are numerous trainings. He's not interested. He's not interested in what is happening here. You are the one that is interested in what is happening here. Yes, he's on the platform. Yeah, he's on the platform doesn't mean he's really keen. If the project management training is not going on, trust me, it will fill up this space with another training and you will enjoy it. Does that make any sense? So we can say 3. Exactly. Oluwafemi, that's the power. He has power to make decision, but that doesn't mean he's actually interested. His interest is high. So he has power, but what we can do with him is we can always inform him that, you know what, a typical example is, and I'll call out Deji now. I'll call out Deji. The second week, Deji called me to say, you know what, Ayo, we've got a guy who wants to talk about Microsoft Power App. Is only available from 8 o'clock on that day. What do you think? Is it possible you move your next class to the next whatever, whatever? Because it's a provost, I can't say no to that. It's got a power. Do you understand? It's got a power. He used his power, and I said, hey, do you know what? He said, you know, but I know the politics, and I said, did you go ahead and all that? Go ahead and all of that. It's got a power, so you can actually say, you know what? For today, we don't even want to do anything. We don't want to do anything, but interest is low. His interest is not really that interested because it's got how many projects, it's got how many trainings, it's got close to like 15 courses going on. He can't be interested in all of them. You get, so his interest is quite low. So we need to say, okay, because he's got the power, but it's got a very low interest. If you look at this grid very well, if you look at the grid I have here, if the interest is low and the power is high, what do? We have to keep him satisfied. We have to keep him satisfied to say, you know what, we're keeping you satisfied. Yes, the training is going on well. Yes, people are attending. People are attending the training. Yes, we've got 60 people online and all of that. So it's a good class and all of that. You get. So that is how you manage your stakeholder. You need to understand what's the power of this person, what is the interest of this person. If the power is low and the interest is high, what we just do is we just keep the person informed. But if this person's power is high and the interest is high as well, it's just like an HR director. An HR director of an organization, and you're about to deploy, an account director of an organization, you want to deploy SAP FICO for this particular person, or FICO, whatever they call it. You want to deploy SAP FICO for this particular person. He's a director. He's got the power. He sits on the board. And this particular person, you need to manage him closely. If he's not happy with your project, that might be the end of your project. So for this particular stakeholder, you want to say, you know what? We need to manage this person closely. So on your stakeholders register, you have everybody documented. You have to understand what's the power and what is the interest of this person. So you now use this grid to put them in different boxes. So anybody that appears on the purple grid, come on, guys, we need to make sure that we manage these people closely. You can't afford, if we don't manage them closely, that might be the end of our project. How will you know interest of a stakeholder is high or not? Yes, it's not, as a project manager, it's not what you're doing alone. You have to have a workshop and bring everybody in, because what you might think is this person is interested in, at the end of the day, someone that has more information will tell you that person is not interested in this particular project, forget it. So you need to, as the way you did your planning workshop is the same way I always recommend people to do a stakeholders management workshop, so that you will understand that we've documented. Because if as a PMO person, as a project manager, you're sitting down to document the stakeholders, you might not capture everybody, you might not even do a good job to know the power and the interest of that particular person. So always make sure that you do it with your team, or you find someone that has been within the organization for a while as a subject matter expert in that area. Sit down with this person and let this person give you a lowdown and talk through your stakeholders register that you've got, and the person can tell you that, oh, this person, you need to manage this person. And you will always tell me that whenever you're in an organization, you know those people. You know those people. As the moment you stay longer in an organization, you know, that guy, you don't joke with that guy. Okay, make sure you satisfy that guy properly. Make sure you give him, if he sends an email to you, please respond immediately. Don't wait for 24 hours before you respond to that guy's email. I know that you know that kind of people. Who should be kept satisfied as a stakeholder? Yet, like I said, people with high power and low interest, you have to keep them satisfied. So that is what this grid will always help you to do. This is a typical stakeholders register. What you're seeing here is a typical stakeholders register. You have the name, you have a position. This was a register I used in an organization where we have people from all different regions. That is why you have region, central. We have the ASPAC, we have the EMEA, we have the Americas, and we have the Pacific. So you have the unaware. Current engagement is unaware. Who is this person? These stakeholders are unaware of the project. They are unaware. So you're having first person. Let's assume the first person is Oluwafemi Osewa, and we're saying what's the position of this person? Is director of project, or sorry, not director of project, director of operations. What region is from Africa? Current engagement is unaware. this person's desired engagement. We can say, okay, yes, courteous, supportive. These stakeholders are aware of the project and are supporting for change. Power, this person's power is 4 from 1 to 5. His interest is 4. So if his interest is 4, and you can see that his current engagement is unaware, but because we have 4, we have to move that person to supportive. If the power is 4 and the interest is 4, we have better move that person to support. How can someone with power of 4 and interest of 4 be unaware of the project? The project is about to crash. So we have to make sure that we have that. Okay, so major requirement on our way of program require what is the strategy you want to use to manage this person? You need a face-to-face meeting to share project, and who is going to own this person? You can say, okay, is the program manager that should be responsible for that person to engage that person properly. Makes sense? Okay, any question before we close for the day and we move to we start from constraints next week. Next week, Tuesday, I will be having, I've given us an assignment. I'm trying to see where I typed it. Okay, yes, this is it. So next week, I've given us an assignment to say, you know what, we've got a project to deliver for London Borough of Bexley, LBB, and the project is they've contacted us to say, you know, as a team, and in all, that means we should have 5 project managers. We're going to have 5 project managers, and they've contacted your team as a project manager to say, you know, as a project manager, we want to migrate 1,000 laptops from Office 2010 to Office 365. That is a project, and the cost of the project is £100,000, and the duration of a project is 3 months. That is a project. So as a project manager and as your team, I want you to manage this particular project from start to finish. And what I want from your project is I want you to create a project mandate, a business case for your project, a project initiation document called the PID for your project. I want you to create your lessons learned log of lessons learned document. I want to create a detailed risk register for your project. So for the risk register, you can hold on the risk register for now. But I want you to document risk. So no, don't worry, don't hold on this. Yes, I want to create a detailed risk register. Create a detailed risk register. Good. Then I want you to create a project plan. Remember, we've spoken about project plan today, and we said for a project plan, you need to define the activities, you need to sequence the activities, you need to estimate activity duration, you need to estimate the activity resources. That means you now develop your project plan. So you need to create a project plan. Then I need the end project report to be done as well, meaning your sign-out document to say, you know what, we've done this particular project, that is it. So how are we going to go about it? Like I said, if you look at this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 things to do. So next week, Tuesday, each team will be speaking on one of these documents. But I don't know what team will be talking about what. So I want every team, all the teams, to work on all of these documents. So next week, if I call your team and say, you know what, group A, team A, I want you to talk about, to tell us about the detailed project plan, and you're telling me, you know what, we didn't do it, that is not going to sound well. What if other groups didn't do it, but all they did was the rest? So I want you to attend everything. So the best thing to do is, while you have your team, maybe 10 people in a team, you might even group it within your team to say, well, you know what, 2 people, let's do this, 3 people, let's do that, 4 people, let's do that. But my major focus is the whole team must come together and talk through what you've done so that everybody can have a feel of what should be contained in some of those documents and how we need to do some of this work exactly. Does that explain the project properly? Or you still need further explanation? All right, that is it for today, everybody. I will be signing out now. Thank you very much. Talk to you guys next week.